All right, welcome back to the program. Let's delve into our first conversation now. Taiwo, the West Africa tax leader at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, is joining me right now via Skype. Mr. Oyedele, good to see you again. Welcome to the program. Very quickly.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. Happy Independence. Let's start from, it's been a tradition for me since Monday. Where were you during independence in the 60s? Or were you told stories of the 60s?
Okay. I guess you're asking me where I was in the 60s, right?
Yes, when Nigeria had its independence. Were you among the children then?
Yeah, I certainly wasn't born at the time. Otherwise, I'll be retiring this year. 60 is the age of retirement. So because I'm still in active, confirms that I wasn't born and I'm not using football age. So yes, I wasn't around.
You brought up another angle, football age in Nigeria. That may falsification of age, but I don't want to go into that. So what were the kind of stories that your parents told you, or relatives or friends, 60 stories? What were the kind of stories?
Yeah, I think it was more. Yeah, it was more about the excitement of independence because people just want something that they feel that they can be in control of, and nobody was excited being ruled by some strange people from a different land. So those excitements, I don't know whether, because I grew up in the village, I'm not sure that our parents, our uncles and aunties in the village understood what it meant. From an economic point of view, from a political standpoint, but they were just happy because everybody else was happy. So we were told those stories about the good old days, and unfortunately, it seems like every year the previous year is better than the current one. So by the time I was born, 15 years after independence, it wasn't anything to celebrate anymore. So those were the few things that we heard about the independence.
Away from the independence, because I've been chronicling the colonial economy to what we have right now, our own national economy, since Monday. So it's been a journey for I and my viewers on the show since Monday. But if we take a look from the 60s till now, what was also remarkable, the years that were remarkable was the 80s. The 80s were quite tumultuous, they were quite challenging for the country. They were also quite symbolic in terms of our economic history. At least I read Shagari's Economic Stabilization Act, which is known as austerity measures. Then we now had a coup again by, I think, General Buhari. In the 83 to 85, the austerity measures brought in a bit of gains. Then we now saw General Ibrahim Babangida, another coup. During all those times, government revenues fell as a result of the world recession as well as oil price decline. Why was the 80s so significant in Nigeria's economic history?
Yeah, I think, if we just think about the fundamental reasons why you need a structural adjustment program or why you need austerity measures, it's simple. It's fiscal imbalances. If you are spending more than you are generating, and it is not temporary, for example, with COVID-19, many countries across the world are having to spend more than they generate, but that's a short-term problem, so that's okay. But if you have a structure that makes sure that you spend more than you generate, that becomes a problem because it means that what you're doing is not sustainable in the short term, medium term, or the long term. And then if you then approach, some people to please loan you money, some people now will be, particularly the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and the World Bank. It's just common sense. If you have a friend who is broke and they want to borrow from you, and you know the reason why they were broke in the first place is the way they spend, you're not going to just give them the money and start praying to God that they pay you back. What you're going to ask them to then do is to say, how do you control your spending? Your spending pattern has a problem. Can you cut down on waste? Can you be more productive? Can you attract more investment? Can you grow the economy? Those were the issues, I believe, were the main reason and the focus of those various measures, from austerity measure to SAP, and even what we are having currently now.
So from what you're saying, we wouldn't have avoided the structural adjustment program of the 80s, because when the oil boom came, we discovered oil in 1958. We started making so much oil revenue, I think in the 70s, what have you. It now, dropped in the 80s. From what you're saying right now, structural adjustment program, there was no way we could hide from it. There was no way we could take the loans.
We may not have called.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, Mr. Oyedele, are you still there? Okay, let's quickly take a break to reconnect with him again. We're still talking about the structural adjustment program of the 80s. A lot of people in Nigeria will recall. In fact, when you want to say about economic history, perhaps one of the few things that will come to mind will be, okay, it's SAP. The structural adjustment days, austerity measures, austerity measures. But let's quickly take another break. When we come back, possibly Taiwo Oyedele will be joining me again. Do stay. Hello YouTubers, welcome to Moneyline with Nancy TV YouTube channel. This is where we provide you with instructive business directions, processes, and guidance to help you assess the right resources to fund your businesses to withstand every form of internal and external shock. You will find here awesome informative videos on business, entrepreneurship, and lifestyle, just to help you make informed business and financial decisions. Punch the subscribe button and let us drive you through the world of business. Please follow all our social media platforms on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and follow us for latest updates on our website. All right, welcome back. Taiwo Oyedele is joining me right now again after the break. We had a technical hiccup. He's the West Africa tax leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's joining me via phone now. We couldn't, the network issues. What exactly is happening? Okay, Mr. Oyedele, if you're there and you can still hear me, I was asking you before the break if there was a way we could have avoided the structural adjustment program that came with its conditionalities.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so the point is that we may have avoided a structural adjustment program in the sense that it was a program that was packaged for a specific purpose as demanded by the IMF and the World Bank, but we could not have avoided doing something about the structure of the economy. If you have an economy where structurally you are spending more than you are generating, and it's not a temporary problem, that's not sustainable. Those were the days when we had price control, interest rates was being controlled, we had a lot of subsidies. Structurally, it wasn't going to help the economy to grow, and therefore, if we then needed money to be able to fund government, infrastructure, social services, recurrent expenditure, paying back the debt, interest, everything. And you then went to someone to borrow, being the IMF and maybe the World Bank. Nobody's just going to give you their money and hope that everything will be well. So it is common sense that they would then ask you to say, whatever led you into this problem in the first place, let's do something about it, because we need you to be able to pay back the money we are lending to you. So that's where usually you find the structural adjustment programs. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria. We've seen so many countries that have been asked to, undertake similar exercises because they have to borrow money, and structurally they need to be in a position to be able to pay back the amount they borrowed.
Okay, Mr. Oyedele, you know that when Nigerians think about SAP, they think about it in a very wrong way. Just like you said, we were a spendthrift as a country. We were not doing what we were supposed to do even in the 80s, and that plunged us into that economic quagmire. The question I asked you, which was, could we have avoided it? Could that be another scenario if we hadn't taken the structural adjustment program with its conditionalities? Like I mentioned earlier, I think the Economic Stabilization Act of Shagari now, austerity measures, could we have retained that if we had rejected the IMF structural adjustment program, and perhaps came up with a Nigerianized model of economic recovery for us at that time? So I've given two scenarios. If we had not gone with structural adjustment program, out of these two options, which would we have gone with?
Yeah, so I think if we understand where the problem was coming from, of course we could have avoided any form of structural adjustment if we didn't run the economy the way we did. By the time you got to that point where the price of oil was down to maybe less than $10 a barrel, and you didn't have any immediate sources of funding the economy, at that point it was too late. It could no longer be prevented. What you then can do is, how do you manage the crisis? So whether the adjustment or the program is homemade in Nigeria, for Nigeria, by Nigerians, or whether it's something you borrow from abroad because you are borrowing abroad, we have to do things differently. And I don't think that if you develop a program locally, that you can then avoid cutting waste, reducing social spending, making sure that you allow market forces to determine, what's done. And those days were the days of cocoa board, for example. We had price control. We had control of interest rates. So whether the program developed internally within Nigeria or not, you needed to address those issues. So I personally think that the problem Nigeria had wasn't the structural adjustment program itself. It wasn't fit for our circumstances, and the implementation wasn't put within the context of our reality as at that time. And these issues are still with us as of today. I always say that there's no crime in anyone offering you terms and conditions. It's a problem for you if you accept them when they are not suitable to your own circumstances. It is not for the other party to think about themselves and then think about you from beginning to the end. That's your responsibility. Otherwise, why are you in the whole arrangement? So, that's my perspective on that.
So perhaps you've just gone with the second option that I gave, which is by Nigerianized model to get us out of that quagmire we were at that time. But were there benefits of structural adjustment program? Because I know that a few things also came up from the structural adjustment program. ND, Nigeria, is it National Directorate of Employment, or Nigerian ND was established, I think, in 86 or so. We had DFRI too at that time, Directorate for Food and Road Infrastructure, something, all those acronyms. We also had the People's and Community Banks set up at that time. The People's and Community Banks we don't have now. We have microfinance banks and all of that. So were there some snippets of structural adjustment program that were good that we still have up till today?
Yeah, the answer is certainly yes. One of the major areas where I thought that we should have even done on our own was a lot of emphasis on privatization. If you have everything about the economy within the public sector, there's a limit to the extent to which you can grow, because the public sector in many countries, particularly in developing countries such as Nigeria, is not designed to be effective and efficient to the maximum limit. People do just what is enough to get by. And a good example today is, you look at the telecommunication sector and you just compare the contribution today that we're getting to GDP, to growth, to employment and everything. So when it was only NITEL, right? And you can replicate that example in many ways. Today we are talking about the NNPC, we're talking about the refineries. We now know the refineries spent over 86 billion naira on maintenance and running expenses when they did not even refine a single barrel of crude oil. So I would say those, privatization exercises and moving more towards market forces are things that I think that even with hindsight are still good for Nigeria as of today. There's the general perception in Nigeria, which I think is something fundamentally wrong with the way we think, and that is that our people are poor, which is a fact. And therefore we must artificially keep the prices of everything low so they can afford them. And it's not valid. You keep it low, but they'll still be poorer than the price and they cannot afford it. So that's a different model.
Okay.
Different model is, why don't you allow prosperity? So let your people be successful so that they can afford prices even if they. So today, if you want to have a decent meal in New York, you need to spend about $20 or more. In Lagos or Abuja, you can have a decent meal with $2, but yet many people can't afford the $2. So the problem is the price of the food. The problem is with the economic ability and power of the people to afford what they need.
Okay, finally, as we end this session, do you think we've really learned the lessons of the structural adjustment program? Which I know you just glossed through it a bit in one of your earlier statements, but have we really learned a lesson? Because you actually also did say that we should have a model that is suitable for us as an economy, and even the guests that I've had since Monday till today have also maintained that. What lessons have we learned? You're talking about a model now. There's a new development plan, Nigeria Agenda 2050. Will that take us to El Dorado? In the next 60 years, would we be still talking about this?
Yeah, so unfortunately we haven't learned, and the best way to even determine whether we have learned anything or not is just to look at the results we are getting today. So we're still here talking about subsidy of petroleum products, or petrol in particular. We're still debating whether we should artificially keep the price of electricity low. I believe that what you need to do is protect the poor and the vulnerable and allow the middle class and the upper class to fund that temporary subsidy for a while so you can attract more investment for growth. So today, as of Q1, we're spending 99% of federal government revenue to service debt, which means we borrowed to take care of the current expenditure. So those issues are still there. Diversification was one of the focal areas during those adjustments. We still have it as a fundamental problem as of today. So we haven't learned, in my view. What we need to do is, I'll say it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to do things differently. It's an opportunity for a new beginning. We are 60 and we are together, but we have to be together with parity. Some people are focusing on, let's have control of our resources. Let's discuss whether we want to be together. And I say, well, the issue is not whether you want to be together or not. Otherwise, you're asking the question of whether you want to suffer together or suffer alone. Whereas the issue is not suffering together or suffering separately. It's about how we address the issue of suffering so we don't have to suffer in the first place. So we haven't learned, but we have the opportunity to learn.
I think we'll leave it at that. When you were talking about suffering, what came to my mind is the late Fela Anikulapo Kuti. Suffering and smiling. Perhaps that's what we're still saying right now. If you are smiling, many more are suffering. Thank you very much, Mr. Oyedele, for bringing in your perspectives.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been speaking with Taiwo Oyedele, who is the West Africa tax lead at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Let's quickly take a break. When we come back, Nnaji Kokora, the Director, Corporate Communications Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria, will be joining me for the CBN Weekly segment. In fact, the CBN commenced operation in 1959, a year before independence, if I'm not mistaken. It was set up, I think, in 1958, commenced operations in 1959. In fact, let me leave the history for Mr. Okorafor to take over when he comes. I'll be right back.